Good evening. 2020 will go on record as one of the most challenging years to date, not only for Belize, but across the globe. Since March, a newly discovered coronavirus began disrupting all our day-to-day norms and interactions. Today, the once-in-a-century pandemic continues to rage. Daily infections and deaths continue to grow, causing untold pain to families across the country and putting immense pressure on our health system. The pandemic has affected every sector of society, shattering an already fragile economy, plunging tens of thousands into unemployment, and forcing school children to adapt to learn from home. Yet amid all the upheaval, national elections ushered in a new administration with a new mandate, and families continue to brave the challenges coming their way. So let's revisit the big moments, month by month, of 2020. The year started with big political news. The UDP went into gear to elect a new leader to succeed retiring Prime Minister and UDP party leader Dean Barrow. John Saldivar entered the race as a top contender. Early on, signs began to surface that a money laundering scheme far away in the United States would have a bearing on who would ultimately become the UDP leader. Saldivar was linked to fraudster Lev Derman, accused in one of the U.S.'s biggest money laundering schemes.
The two sides have been arguing over evidence in the case, and some of that evidence includes text messages between Jacob Kingston and John Saldivar. And according to prosecutors who presented some of this evidence to the judge, Mr. Kingston is going to testify that the defendant, Lev Derman, was sending cash payments to John Saldivar, and that Mr. Kingston eventually took over those payments.
This came out in the case management conference, correct?
Yes, I mean, they call it a pre-trial hearing, but yes, that's accurate. I think if Mr. Kingston does testify about any payments to John Saldivar, it's going to be in the context of how this scheme was organized. One of the elements is that Lev Derman had a number of contacts in the United States government, in local governments here, and even overseas, and that one of those may have been John Saldivar.
At the end of January, the novel coronavirus was declared a public health emergency of international concern by the World Health Organization. The Saldivar-Derman scandal all came to a head in mid-February. Even as the scandal brewed, Saldivar won the UDP leadership at the convention on February 9th. A mere 2 weeks later, the case in the Utah courts named Saldivar in text message exchanges about receiving tranches of U.S. cash. This ultimately forced him to resign. Hippolyte Novello covered the proceedings in Utah.
These are the text messages sent to and from confessed fraudster Jacob Kingston and disgraced UDP cabinet minister John Saldivar. 33 text messages were sent and received between February 11th and February 16, 2014. On February 11th, Saldivar casually texts Kingston, "Hey Jacob." Kingston's response, "Hello." "How are things?" Saldivar asks Kingston, who replies, "Good. Who is this?" The response, "John Saldivar, brother." Saldivar goes on to tell Kingston that he is nervous because he has commitments for that week and he has not heard of the infamous Lev Derman. Kingston informed Saldivar that he, along with Derman, had recently returned from Turkey. Saldivar says, "Okay." Kingston does not respond. Almost an hour later on the same day, Saldivar reignites the conversation, telling Kingston that 4 of his candidates have been successful in conventions already. I've noticed that during that time, there weren't any conventions occurring. The message goes unanswered. Saldivar texts Kingston again an hour later, telling Kingston that, quote, "It's looking real good so far, but I'm out of cash," unquote. Minutes after, Kingston asks Saldivar, "What can I do?" Saldivar tells Kingston that he needs the February tranche. "Can I wire?" Kingston asks Saldivar. Akasha Saldivar responds, quote, "Not sure that's a good idea." Kingston asks for instructions. Saldivar tells him that he could fly to Miami on February 12th. Kingston tells him that he'll send some money to Miami. Tell me how much to send, Kingston asks Saldivar. Saldivar tells him, quote, usually it's $25K, but perhaps it's best to deal with the March at the same time, unquote. The message goes unanswered. You dare, Saldivar asks Kingston. Saldivar gets Kingston to confirm his request for the February and March tranches. That's $50,000. Saldivar also confirms that he will travel the following day to Miami. According to Kingston, he saw left Thurman hand over to Saldivar stacks of cash. On February 16, Kingston asked Saldivar if he got what he needed. Saldivar responds, yes, buddy, enough thanks. Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
And from political scandals to protests, Belizeans took to the streets to protest against corruption.
Constitution Park was the staging ground for a massive turnout of teachers and other unionists across the country who gathered here in Belize City this morning to demonstrate against corruption and other scandals that are plaguing government. Organized by the National Trade Union Congress of Belize, the protest succeeded a pair of press conferences held by the umbrella organization, during which its leadership candidly criticized the Barrow administration for falling woefully short of several expectations.
This is just a start, a warming up of sorts, but we want to ensure that the people who are in the position of power can make the decisions and address the 6 points that we raised. Pay keen attention to the fact that we have full support of our membership countrywide and support from other organizations, as you can see, that have already joined in the struggle for us to change the laws, address accountability and transparency.
The effective implementation of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, is one of the 6 demands being made by the trade unions.
You know of the 6 demands that we are making, and we stand by those 6 demands. We trust that the government and the other political parties who are hearing us will realize that what we are saying, is serious and that they must address the matters.
This demonstration comes amid a lot of perceived turmoil, if I may, within the ruling party, the government of the day, and of course everything else that's happening on a social scale. Share with us what is the position of the teachers as a collective regarding what is happening in our country today.
Well, of course they're not satisfied. You see the numbers today, and that is just saying that we are not satisfied with what is going on. We are to spend some time to make sure that the systems in our country are fixed, that our country can then proceed forward in a manner that is going to be beneficial to all of our people living in this country.
While historical comparisons can be drawn to events of the past, particularly in 2005 and 2016, when the unions came together and took an unwavering position against governments for several reasons, including transparency and accountability, today's momentum did not result in such a resolution. Quite frankly, it only serves to set the stage for what is to come should government not meet those 6 demands.
While we are here marching for good governance, we have persons in government who are right now having a meeting at Belmopan, trying to determine who is going to be the leader and how the party is going to move forward. It's as if though they're saying to us, you go ahead and you march and we will do what we want to do. That can't work. It cannot be that if you are saying that you want to have serious dialogue with us and you want to work with us, then you don't do such things. You respect us and you listen to us. And if it is that they refuse to listen, then remember that right now we are calling for reforms. Remember 2005, there were 3 R's, right? So we are the first R, reform. What comes next? We will find out.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isana Cayetano.
A second drug plane suspected of transporting drugs landed in Belize. This time, though, police were able to seize the illicit cargo. It was the biggest cocaine shipment known to make its way through Belize. The Gulf Stream landed off the coastal road where law enforcement had been deployed.
Another drug plane landed in rural Belize in the pre-dawn hours of this morning. It is one of dozens of flights that have been en route to this tiny Central American country from the point of origin in Venezuela. Laden with a payload of 69 bales of cocaine, the aircraft touched down on a crude runway in a remote area of the Belize district, approximately 2 miles off the coastal road.
The plane landed at approximately 4:05 a.m. this morning, and the team comprising of police and BDF quickly responded to the area where we got the information the plane had landed. And upon our arrival at the location, we found the plane, which is a G2 jet.
The landing of a Gulfstream aircraft in this vicinity of the coastal road sometime overnight has resulted in another seizure of cocaine coming in from South America.
Inside the plane was 69 bales of what we suspected to be cocaine. Those 69 bales amounted to 2,070 parcels of suspected cocaine. We also found in the area 2 M16 rifles and some masks. We believe that those persons who were involved in the plane landing might have seen us coming into the area from a distance, and by the time we got to the location, they had disappeared.
The sizable haul of narcotics was then transported overland by a convoy of heavily armed vehicles into Belize City, where each bale was hefted from the back of the flatbed truck and taken into storage. Contrary to reports made earlier, Commissioner of Police Chester Williams says that there was no sum of money found on board the aircraft.
Let me say that there was no monies being moved. It was on the drugs. No money was found on the plane or within the area of the plane.
The street value of the illicit cargo, according to Compol Williams, is still being calculated. Reporting for News 5, I am Isana Cayetano.
The enormous bust was overshadowed by the devastating crash of a BDF helicopter. 2 pilots and 2 crew members of the Belize Defense Force died. The crash took place while conducting air surveillance near the site of the drug plane off the coastal road. And the circumstances surrounding the crash raised serious questions.
4 Belize Defense soldiers are dead. 2 pilots, Major Adran Ramirez and Major Radford Beiser, along with their 2 crew members, Corporal Yasir Mendez and Corporal Reynaldo Choco, all died when their helicopter crashed into the western lagoon that falls within the Gales Point Wildlife Sanctuary off the coastal road. Sometime after 2 this afternoon, all 4 bodies were retrieved from the crash site. It's recorded as the worst crash in the history of the BDF. According to the Ministry of National Security, the team was part of the air surveillance support to law enforcement authorities who seized 69 bales of suspected cocaine on Thursday morning off the coastal road. It wasn't until this morning the public became aware that the men were missing. But according to the Minister of National Security, Michael Perfeet, the search started on Thursday night after they became alarmed that the men hadn't returned from their mission. That search led to the bodies earlier today. Minister Michael Perfeet explains why the helicopter remained in the area following the seizure of the drugs.
And one of the reasons for that success is because we had outstanding air support and assistance. Normally, when we have the air assistance from the helicopters, it is standard operating procedure for that helicopter to either stay on the ground with the supporting troops, or they would hover in the immediate area to see if they can discover or get any additional clues toward the landing of the plane.
The scene is under security. It's been cordoned and is being protected. That is not tampered with. We are yet to assemble the accident investigation team and the rest of the team comprising of the police and the forensics. We want to get to the bottom of exactly what happened, and at the end of the day, the ships will fall away where they will, and the truth shall be told.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
In March, the World Health Organization declared the viral outbreak to be a global pandemic. And shortly after, Belize detected its first case of the novel coronavirus, now named COVID-19, in San Pedro.
Belize is already feeling the devastating effects of COVID-19, and with the first confirmed case, the country's economy is expected to suffer greatly. The first confirmed case was reported in La Isla Bonita, San Pedro town and Burgess Key, Belize's top tourist destination. The government declared a state of emergency on the island. No one goes in and no one leaves. After the announcement was made, residents quickly packed up and headed to the water taxi terminals with the intention to arrive on the mainland. Flights were grounded. Tropic Air announced the suspension of flights to and from Burgess Key. The water taxi terminals in Belize City were shut down, and 2 ocean ferry vessels filled with passengers from Keycocker village were prohibited from docking at the Brown Sugar Water Taxi Terminal in Belize City. After 2.5 hours, the passengers were allowed to disembark, after which they were screened and sprayed with disinfectant. Outside the ocean ferry terminal, Keycocker villagers were up in arms after they were not being allowed to travel to Keycocker. Meanwhile, in San Pedro town, panic and fear is real.
There is a sense of fear and panic right now, that I cannot lie about that. No, people are just messaging me, calling me, and I keep on repeating the same thing that we were saying this morning on the radio, to remain calm. I know there was a little bit of rush at the boat and at the flight, but I understand those who has been cancelled for a while, and see what happens from there. But pretty much it doesn't make sense that you be rushing, and I think I want to reach out again to remain calm. And the reason is that if we are here in a Burgess Key, we don't know who this person is, where that person may have been around, we don't know. So it's best for us to remain here. I think we're safer here to be staying here and not to go back to our homes. You know, we have that risk, that inherent risk that you don't want to do that.
Quarantine, isolation, whichever term you want to use. But we are unable to do that if we don't get the cooperation of the public. I know that after we made the announcement, there were lots of people that were simply just wanting to get off the island. It doesn't mean also that everybody who was in San Pedro is automatically at risk. It doesn't mean that automatically you need to come off the island, and that's not the due process then.
With employment in the tourism sector already taking a deep dive, a confirmed COVID-19 case on the island is expected to force San Pedranos to change their daily routine, stay home, stay calm, and take preventative measures to prevent the spread of the deadly disease. Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
The virus wasn't the only problem government was trying to contain. Crime in Belize City began to spike, so the government declared a 30-day state of emergency to control crime on the south side of Belize City.
At 3 o'clock this morning, as many as 250 law enforcement officers descended on various neighborhoods across Belize City. The coordinated pre-dawn sweep saw the rounding up of 82 persons described by the police department as known street figures who are actively involved in criminality. The raid, similar to one effected on the morning of September 5, 2018, heralded another state of emergency on the south side. Assistant Commissioner of Police Marco Vidal is the commander of operations.
We planned an operation that will carry us through the period that is necessary. And so this morning at 3 a.m., we launched an operation that is targeted. It is not random. It is targeted at the gang elements who have been causing the issues for us in terms of the violent crimes. So since this morning from 3 until current, we have just over 82 persons detained. The operation is continuing, so we may have increased numbers by the end of the day. However, our operation is being targeted in 8 zones that have been declared as the emergency areas for the state of emergency.
The Ministry of National Security has deemed it necessary and sought the approval of the Governor General, and we have gotten it, for him to declare a state of emergency and for him to sign some regulations governing the activities to be undertaken by the police, the BDF, and Coast Guard, if necessary, in the declared and demarked areas.
The largest of those 8 identified hotspots is Lake Independence. This morning, motorists traversing Central American Boulevard were being diverted to a single ingress into the community.
The time for talking is done. And so, going forward, my message to the gang members is this. If you want to live in society peacefully, it is your duty to adjust to society behavior and not the society to adjust to your behavior. And so we will be going after them night and day.
We must also demonstrate to the criminal element that their activities are not going to continue without them facing and being dealt with to the full extent of the law.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
By mid-month, the government and the opposition showed a united front to fight the pandemic. A first joint press conference between Prime Minister Dean Barrow and the leader of the opposition, John Briceño, was called to collectively announce the measures to prevent the disease's spread.
There were some decisions that were made, and I'm going to read out 5 of them. The first one was that, number 1, the postponement of the SIB census until next year, and use some of the resources already allocated for the census to collect data associated with COVID-19. 2, all schools will be closed effective Friday, March 20th for 14 days, which will lead right into the Easter break. This is being done with a view to make up for the school days within the current school year, depending on how the situation evolves. A, it is stressed that this is not a vacation. B, parents and students alike must follow the government's advisories for social distancing and good hygiene practices. 3, it was agreed to limit all social gatherings to no more than 100 people. These include indoor and outdoor gatherings and events. At present, Belize is prohibiting entry into Belize by nationals of the following countries and persons who have traveled within the last 30 days from China, Hong Kong, Iran, Japan, South Korea, and Europe, including the United Kingdom. This restricted travel list of countries will be continuously monitored and updated as necessary. 5, today it was agreed to close all borders of entry in Belize for passengers and only leave the northern border and the PGIA open. So all other ports of entries, the western, southern, and any other small border points will be closed. This does not apply to cargo vessels.
By the end of that week, the restrictions were extended to a closure of all border entries. This led to the historic closure of the country's only international airport.
Hundreds of millions of people continue to suffer the devastating effects. Belize, a tiny nation of fewer than 400 persons, is taking necessary preventative measures. The COVID-19 National Oversight Committee met today, and to reduce the threat of transmission, the committee took several decisions. First, as of midnight on Saturday, the northern border of Belize, which includes the Corozal-free zone, will be closed for traveling unless it is an emergency. It will remain open for cargo. Belizeans will be allowed to return to the country, but will be inspected and possibly quarantined for 14 days. The Philip Goulson International Airport will be closed after the last scheduled flight departs on Monday. The committee stresses that the movement of cargo trucks and planes is not being restricted. As for social gatherings, the limit will be 25. Social gatherings include wakes, funeral, wedding, and other social events. This limit, however, does not apply to places of employment, as it is expected that employers have put in place business protocols for social distancing and continuity of business. These restrictions will remain in place for 30 days, after which it will be reviewed. Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
After a third confirmed case of COVID-19 in the country, the government declared a national state of emergency. The nationwide shutdown placed restrictions on the movement of persons outside of 5 in the morning to 7:59 at night when a curfew kicked in. Businesses considered essential services such as the media, supermarkets, and pharmacies were allowed to operate. The police and BDF were on the streets to ensure compliance with strict measures.
When we wake up Thursday morning, we're in a state of national emergency.
Across the country, Belizeans will awaken to a new reality on April 2nd. The biosecurity risk associated with the transmission of the novel coronavirus has prompted government to take stringent measures in restricting the free movement of citizens. With the Governor General's assent, the Barrow administration is now empowered to perform actions and impose policies that, under any other circumstance, save for a natural disaster, civil unrest, or armed conflict, it would not be authorized to carry out.
We have a plan in place. All we're waiting for this to be made official and law, and the generals and the colonels will be the ones to direct how best it is to carry out this particular mandate. As you know, the police have the power of arrest, but in here we are seeing where the police can bring in the help of the BDF and the Coast Guard to help with arrests if necessary. But there is a plan in place. It's a Herculean task indeed, because you're talking about the entire nation, but it is something that we have been thinking about now for the past month.
Given a third confirmation of COVID-19 on March 29th, the Belize Constitution Emergency Powers Regulations 2020 have been enacted, effecting a state of national emergency. Such a proclamation warns the citizenry to change normal behavior and requires government agencies, including law enforcement, to implement urgent strategies.
We have a plan to implement it because indeed we do want to enforce the law, but we want as soft a touch as possible and not as much as the military presence. That's not necessary. But if we have to, and that's the only way to enforce what we have to do to prevent anybody else from contracting this disease, then that's what we will do.
This morning, during the final hours just ahead of the national state of emergency, there was a flurry of activity in parts of Belize City. On the south side, residents of Port Loyola joined the meandering line of last-minute customers at 88 Shopping Center. Among the policies stipulated in the Belize Constitution Emergency Powers Regulations 2020 is social distancing. Under this piece of law, social distancing is defined as the practice of staying at home, avoiding crowds, and refraining from touching one another, and maintaining a distance of no less than 3 feet from other persons. Many in that queue were not adhering to these guidelines, and the police had to be called in.
Guys, we just want to maintain our distance, so I want you guys to work with us, work with police, work with yourself. As long as we adhere to these rules, everything will be okay. Everybody are getting turned to go inside the store.
It is clear that there is a real risk to the health and lives of Belizeans as a result of the outbreak of this infectious disease. In response, far-reaching measures must be put in place to limit the negative effects of this pandemic. I am satisfied, having received the best advice available from experts and after consultation, that it is in the public's interest to support the decision to declare a state of emergency.
For the purposes of preventing, controlling, containing, and suppressing the spread of COVID-19, as well as maintaining peace and public order, a curfew will be imposed during the hours of 8 o'clock p.m. and 4:59 a.m. of the following morning for the entire country during the public emergency. Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
Thousands of jobs were lost as business activity declined. The tourism industry crashed. Revenue to government coffers reduced drastically. When the government rolled out its unemployment relief in April, the real picture of the economic effects started to show. The website crashed in one day as Belizeans scrambled for assistance to put bread on their tables and feed their families.
We issued close to 7,000 forms across the country today, and that is the physical form. The forms are available online, and I think they prefer the online option, that the persons use the online option, but the website has been down all day. We were anticipating that our largest crowds would come today because there were a lot of people just simply waiting for the forms to be available. But time will determine that as we go forward. I know as well that a large percentage of persons who are able to apply can access the online version. So I am thinking they are waiting for the online version. I think this morning Ms. Barnett had said that Up to this morning, before the site went down, they had already received around 5,000 online applications. And so I'm thinking that when that comes back up, they will probably be receiving another influx of applications.
On April 6th, Belize recorded its first COVID-19 death. Hubert Pipersberg, a Cayo resident and Belize City Council employee, became the first victim of the virus.
It is my sad duty to announce the death this afternoon of the fourth patient to be diagnosed in Belize with COVID-19. On behalf of the entire nation, I offer deepest condolences to the wife and family of Hubert Pipersberg. He was a well-known, indeed renowned Belizean who served his country both at home and in the diaspora. Mr. Pipersberg was diagnosed in San Ignacio early on Friday last and was transferred to the KHMH that same evening. He was then intubated and appeared stable until today, when he deteriorated sharply. He died despite what I am assured were Herculean efforts on the part of the medical staff to save him.
There was some celebratory news for the judiciary. A female acting Chief Justice was appointed for the first time. Justice Michelle Arana made history when she was named to the top judicial post.
I, Michelle Arana, do swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Belize and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as acting Chief Justice and do right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will. So help me God.
On May 5th, Belize reached a critical milestone. All 18 patients recovered, and Belize had 0 active cases of COVID-19.
We're down to 0 active COVID-19 cases. Does this mean that we're free from COVID-19? What is the case?
Yeah, that's a piece of good information that I just received, and today we got our data earlier than normal. I guess people were in a hurry to confirm the last 2 active cases. And the short answer to the question is no. We are not free of COVID-19, and I think we need to get down to the point that COVID-19 is here to stay with us. And that's the piece of bad news in the good news that we are delivering this afternoon.
How many days should go by without any confirmed case where we can officially declare Belize COVID-19 free?
Well, the reason I'm a little bit cautious about saying COVID-19 free is because even though we may get over this first wave, which is where I think we are going towards, or the question is leading towards, is we have to be mindful of the fact that COVID-19 is going to be around us. It's not really going to ever go away. We don't live in a bubble. So eventually you can have a second wave. So if we are able to make it through next week, Sunday, Monday, without any case, we would be able to say that at least this first wave seems to have been contained, and we should be able to finish our preparations for whenever a second or third wave comes about. I mean, we may have gotten over the first wave, but when the second wave is going to come is the question here. It's not if, but it's when.
Businesses were allowed to reopen to jumpstart economic activities. Even though the curfew remained, shutters went up as businesses big and small could conduct transactions. This is how it looked on Albert Street when businesses reopened.
In downtown Alberton Region streets in Belize City, the economic hub of the old capital, it appeared to be business as usual after about 6 weeks of lockdown. There was a lot of traffic on the streets when compared to weeks ago, and many wore masks while others stood in queues outside banks, retail stores, and elsewhere, adhering to the 6 feet rule of social distancing. A state of emergency remains in place, but there has been an ease on restrictions in an effort to reopen the economy.
And the NOC and the government has decided to relax the SI even more from Friday, because we think we have it under control internally in the country to a certain extent so far. The Minister of Health informed me this morning that we only have 2 active cases remaining, and they're within the same family. So we are confident that we can expand the local economy, the internal economy, a little bit more in a safe way. LPG suppliers, bakeries, markets, 5 to 7 at night. All other businesses can now open from 8 in the morning till 7 at night. Is that clear?
That clarification comes after a hiccup over the weekend when well-known fabric store Mikado was closed down by officers for not being authorized to open. And by 11 o'clock, the business had to shut its doors. Today, it was open with its entire complement of staff. Owner Umesh Mahitani says that no revenue was coming in, so they had to send their staff home with half pay. He maintains that they are providing a service, especially during this time.
I think they were not quite sure of whether we should have opened or not, but we had a huge demand for fabric. And so we opened up on Saturday, and then we had to close around 11 o'clock or 11:30 thereabouts, and we went about our merry way, and we're open again today, and the same faithful customers, which we always have, came back again today to purchase what they needed.
Most businesses are being allowed to open between non-curfew hours, including cosmetic stores, clothing stores, and others. They are, however, to exercise social distancing guidelines for customers and employees, and patrons should wear masks at all times. Cellular World reopened its doors today at branches countrywide, and they're also adding a new line to its stock. Cellular World is now selling FDA-approved masks and other protective equipment.
We are cognizant of the fact that communication is key in bringing back a crisis. No? What we did is we adapted quickly enough to at least try to do some online. We were using external approved couriers, delivery services, and we tried to make it our best for people to access the kind of products that we had. But we had to send staff home. I mean, we tried our best to hold on to everyone, and we have a lot of skilled, trained employees that we can't just replace that easily. So it was tough, but we had to try to pull through the best we can. Another thing we're adamant about is online shopping. That avoids big crowds in the stores, and we get it to you versus you coming in and risking yourself. We have set guidelines that we follow to get the product to you. So that's going to be again a new way of life going forward, and we really hope that people embrace that.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
The once booming tourism industry was hard hit by COVID-19. The local airline Tropicair sent home as much as 60% of its employees, some 200 persons, including lifelong employees. Over at Maya Airways, cutbacks were also instituted. In the case of Tropic, the difficult decision came after projections showed that the airline would take another 2 years to rebound.
Public transportation is in a dizzying tailspin despite the resumption of domestic travel by air, sea, and land. Local airline companies, including Tropic and Maya, as well as water taxis, the likes of San Pedro Belize Express and Ocean Ferry, depend heavily on tourism for most of their revenue. The sharp economic downturn amid the coronavirus crisis has left a gaping hole financially that has resulted in numerous layoffs and a restructuring of their respective operations. On Tuesday, Tropic Air was forced to terminate 60% of its workforce countrywide. Alexander Tescum had been working with the company for almost 3 decades.
I was a cargo agent, 27 years, and I get one sudden letter yesterday, man, that was devastating. When I tell you, I feel like you get stabbed in your chest, and it make you feel depressed, man. But you can't blame the company, because no money they come in, how they expect to pay you.
Since March, the airline company, founded in 1979 by John Grief III, has been paying its employees $150 weekly. With its reserves quickly drying up, a letter went out on May 19th to 220 employees, informing them that they had been relieved of their duties.
I went to check my email, and when I opened my email, I get to see a termination letter from tropic air where I work, and literally that just threw off my whole day. Like, home a single parent, I really depended on that job for helping me throughout my bills and other stuff that I plan.
Under the most recent relaxation of regulations under the state of emergency, Belizeans are now allowed to travel across the country. Despite their newfound freedom, local flights booked by Belizean passengers only make up 3% of Tropics operations. A majority of its revenue stream came from visitors.
I don't know how I take life I go on now. Because that's something I used to. 27 years, all my life I spent back there. And I really love it. Serious. But I don't know what will happen now in the future if I will carry on. But I will survive with God. Will provide.
That reality is equally bleak in the water taxi sector. Today is the first day that Ocean Ferry is resuming its runs to San Pedro and Key Corker, and those scheduled departures have been cut down to 3 runs daily.
We're just starting. Today is our first day at reopening. We have this COVID-19 has come and really had an impact in all our lives, economy, family. But right now we are just starting from way down. Step by step we're gonna be growing stronger, and then we're gonna be opening more runs. At the moment we only have 3 runs for Kikaka, 3 runs for San Pedro.
What has business been like for you guys today since you only just reopening?
Well, business is right now slow. I think nobody can say, well, they have started with the right foot, but hopefully we're getting there.
It is arguable that the layoffs at Tropic Air represent the largest number of employees in the private sector being sent home. According to Steve Schulte, Tropics CEO, it will take roughly 2 years for the company to return to 80% of its operational capacity, notwithstanding the fact that it will need significant financial assistance in moving forward. Just a few months ago, the airline introduced a new aircraft that was set for flights outside of the country. Schulte says it is yet to make a revenue flight. Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
After 53 days without a new positive case, a Belize City man tested positive after returning home on the Rhapsody of the Sea ship of the Royal Caribbean Fleet. The Belizean had spent 70 days at sea and returned as a part of the repatriation process.
When that case was detected earlier today, screening tests of the confirmatory test both came out positive for SARS-CoV-2. It's in a male who came off the cruise ship somewhere around 2 weeks. That's the first cruise ship that brought Belizeans back to shore.
A phenomenon sweeping from West Africa was felt in Belize. A Saharan dust cloud blanketed part of the country. Forecasters described it as the worst large-scale dust storm experienced in the Caribbean for a decade.
A thick cloud of Saharan dust is blanketing the Caribbean as it makes its 5,000 miles drift across the Atlantic to the United States. While this natural phenomenon is not unusual, the size and concentration of this year's dust plume is one that hasn't been seen in half a century. The dust cloud is so thick that it covers the African coastline on satellite imagery.
It is a very dry, dusty and warm layer of air that originates over the Sahara Desert in Africa. And when you have outbreaks of sandstorms and dust storms, it gets picked up in the atmosphere and transported across the Atlantic on what we call the African easterly jet. That's a very narrow channel of fast-moving winds in the mid-level of the troposphere, which is about 1 mile above the surface of the Earth. And that does get transported across the Atlantic and into the Caribbean, and eventually all the way to Central America, even the southern United States at times.
In Belize, instead of the typical blue sky, viewers are reporting milky, hazy skies. These are images sent to News 5 from across the country. This is the view in Punta Gorda. In Corozal town, the air is dry and the sky is hazy. And this is a bird's eye view of Belmopan.
Well, for us, generally, typically creates a very milky-looking sky, hazy-looking skies. Visibility is hindered. You're not able to see very far. It is high when it is transported, but eventually the dust eventually comes down, and that's why you see the hazy conditions even near the surface, no? Okay. So it's not suspended all the time. It eventually comes down to near the surface.
Caribbean islands are reporting dangerous conditions as the air quality across the region fell to hazardous level. The dust plume can also have health effects. A Danguga resident reports feeling unwell. Michael Fisher says that he was on the 3rd floor of a building when he suddenly fell ill.
I started to feel the air totally getting drier and heavy, unable to breathe, and then the burning sensation in my face. And the only way I could have relieved myself was to go upstairs and go into the bathroom. I must mention that I was about 3 stories off the ground itself. So I went inside and I soaked my eyes, my face, my nostrils as well. Came to that point whereby I found difficulty in breathing. It was like a wheezing way of getting some air. So I went inside, and automatically, right away, the air inside was much thinner, and I started to breathe a little bit.
But yes, it does have effect on people with respiratory conditions, asthmatic people, and there's also reports that it might irritate the skin.
It is expected that in a week's time, if wind conditions remain the same, the Saharan dust will pass over Belize with intensity over the cloud increasing in the next few days. Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
As the first 6 months of the year concluded, July ushered in another crime-related state of emergency in certain parts of the south side of Belize City due to another spike in gang activity.
An early morning operation carried out by elements of the Belize Police Department has resulted in a cracking down on several Belize City neighborhoods. The pre-dawn raid comes a few days after a violent weekend where 2 persons were gunned down and a woman was injured in what appeared to be gang-related incidents. The sweep, during which 99 persons believed to be active gang members were rounded up, is part of another state of emergency for the south side of Belize City.
We're here because over the weekend, we decided to have parts of Belize City enter into another state of emergency where we would detain certain persons of interest based on what happened last weekend. As you know, during the last state of emergency, certain incidents occurred and there was a threat of it escalating into downright terrorism in Belize City. Similarly, late last week, as you know, one young man was murdered, and over the weekend, another one was murdered, and one young lady was shot in the arm whilst holding a baby.
Commissioner of Police Chester Williams delves into further details of a new SOE that was signed into effect by Governor General Sir Colville Young on Monday evening.
This morning we launched an operation headed by Mr. Vidal, and that operation was to go after those persons who we believe are involved in a recent spate of violent crime in Belize City and to some extent across the country, because it is not just about the shootings but also the robberies that we're seeing across the country, those brazen robberies with people carrying firearms and pushing firearms in the face of people. Those were committed as well by some of the same persons that we targeted this morning.
Targeting 10 gangs in the south side of Belize City. The primary focus, however, was 2 sections or 2 gangs, the Ghost Town gang and the Southside gang and its immediate affiliates. So we utilized just over 300 police officers, 300 officers. That's a combined BDF and police team. That operation included the cordoning of the zones, and by both BDF and the police, and then we utilize our strike teams, which is specialized units, the gang suppression unit, the special patrol unit, the anti-gang task force, special branch, and the mobile interdiction team.
According to Minister of National Security, Michael Perfit, who is also the Attorney General, efforts were being made prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, when the first anti-gang state of emergency was declared, to address the perennial issue of gang violence in the country.
We will not tolerate any lawlessness in this country. We're in the middle of a pandemic already. We don't need any more headaches. So a stiff message has already been sent to persons of interest, and more stiff messages are about to come, especially if they don't decide to straighten up. During this period and beyond, we will have to determine what we can do or say to some of these young men, or do for them, to prevent them from wanting to commit these crimes and to commit these horrible acts in the city and in the country overall.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isane Cayetano.
The UDP held a second leadership convention. It was a subdued event since the pandemic was raging. Patrick Faber was declared the winner, beating John Saldivar to lead the UDP. Immediately after the results were announced, high-profile resignations began to show the party's deep divide.
It is my life's ambition, as you know, to become the leader of this party and to be of service to this party. Of course, the only thing that can make that further complete is offering my service to the country as the Prime Minister of this country someday. And I'm hoping that that is very soon with the historic victory of the UDP that will be in November or whenever the general elections are called.
The ascension of Collet Area Representative Patrick Faber to the leadership of the United Democratic Party was a hard-fought battle, a campaign that was initially won by longtime political opponent John Saldivar on February 9th during the previous national convention. Saldivar's abrupt resignation 72 hours later, at the height of the Lev-Derman scandal, presented another opportunity for the defeated former Deputy Prime Minister to challenge the seat. First, Faber had to recover from the crushing blow that was dealt at the hands of the delegates.
It was a very difficult decision to make. For me, there were lots of things going on. I had to contemplate whether, this was the kind of overall rejection. You know that there were some difficulties with my colleagues right after that situation as well. And so for me, it was a very discerning process whether I wanted to continue or not. But people wouldn't let me say no. Those who supported me were wide in terms of the party and in terms of the country as well. And people kept saying, listen, you cannot give this up.
On July 12th, 3 candidates, including Wilfred Sede Elrington, took part in a second convention in a bid to succeed Prime Minister Dean Barrow as the next leader of the UDP. Unlike the gala affair that was the first event, Sunday's convention was considerably bare bones. Gone were the thousands of supporters who poured into the Belize City Centre under the red banner. In their place was a neatly organized and effective mechanism to move voters in and out of the IT vet compound expeditiously.
My delegates were kept very abreast and very informed of the entire race itself, and so it was just a matter for them to come in and cast their vote. A decision has been made, and so that's as far as I could tell right now.
At 10 a.m., the polls were officially open for ballots to be cast. Patiently awaiting his constituency's turn was Belize Rural South Area Representative Manuel Heredia Jr. The well-known San Pedrano is an avid supporter of Patrick Faber.
The man that can really lead this party to victory, that is what the masses of this party are saying. The only man that can lead this party to victory is Patrick Faber. So today, if you see, most of my delegates are over there waiting that we walk together to go and vote for Patrick Faber. But it is not 100% because we believe in a true democracy. There are at least 4 delegates, mostly from the town council, that are supporting Minister Saldivar. They have every right.
That democratic right was afforded to all delegates, including Lake Independence standard bearer Diane Finnegan. she has been a vocal supporter of John Saldivar, notwithstanding the scandals that plague his candidacy.
I'm not going to go find nobody. He's already there. John Saldivar for leader. There's no looking anywhere.
Ahead of Sunday's convention, questions had arisen pertaining to Saldivar's worthiness as a candidate and whether he had been cleared to run by the UDP's Ethics Committee. Outgoing party leader Dean Barrow spoke on Saldivar's eligibility.
I do not run a dictatorship. I might be primus inter pares, first among equals, but we're all equal. And there's a procedure, and there is an organ of the party called the Ethics Committee. Nobody made any complaint about any of the candidates to the Ethics Committee. All candidates had already run for the party, and there is a presumption in those circumstances that you'll find. So the onus would have been on whoever wished to challenge the eligibility of any of the candidates to make a complaint, and nobody did.
Shortly after 2 o'clock, an official announcement was made by Chairman Michael Perifeet. When the last vote was counted, Patrick Farber had emerged victorious.
567 delegates of the UDP voted today to select the new party leader-elect. 567 out of 569. Patrick Farber received 286 votes. John Saldivar received 267 votes. Wilfred Ellerington received 10 votes, and there were 4 rejected ballots. So the official tally, given the official tally, the Honorable Patrick Farber is the new party-elect leader of the United Democratic Party.
I, Patrick Jason Farber, do solemnly swear that as the United Democratic Party leader-elect, party leader eventually, I will work diligently to bring victory to our United Democratic Party. I pledge to be true and faithful to the principles and ideals of the party. I will uphold the party's constitution, and I will work hard to the very best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
The sensational case of Danny Mason and 4 other convicted murderers concluded in the court. After days of trial, the Mason 5 were sentenced to life in prison.
I can speak on behalf of my mother and my siblings, my extended family, the friends of Lou, that we are satisfied. Nothing about the entire ordeal would allow us to be happy, but I can certainly say that we are satisfied with the sentence that has been delivered today.
Justice for Pastor Lou, the family and friends, as well as the community on whom the 46-year-old had had an impact, are finding closure following the decision by Justice Antoinette Moore to sentence William Danny Mason, Ernest Castillo, Ashton Vanegas, and siblings Kieran and Terence Fernandez to life in prison. During the mitigation hearings, 3 victim impact statements were submitted by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Richard Smith, Juanita Lewis, and Thisbe Usher, the sister of Pastor Lucas. She was constant in court during the course of the trial in the Belmopan Supreme Court. Usher described the trauma on the family.
The impact has been large and wide. My mother, being an elderly person, she relives this murder of her son. Whenever there's a death in our family, she keeps speaking of Lou and his head being found in a bucket full of blood. For myself, my children, we have definitely experienced grief, which word I cannot find the words to explain. But certainly it has been extremely difficult.
The brutality of the incident has plagued the minds of many. The details similar to the script of a horror movie. The evidence detailed that Pastor Lou had been kidnapped and forced into Mason's pickup truck. He was killed, beheaded, his body burnt, and his severed head discovered in a bucket in Mason's truck later that day when police intercepted the men at a bar in Belmopan. DNA tests also proved that blood samples taken from clothing were positively identified as that of the pastor. Usher says that in a sense the family is getting closure even though the motive for his killing is still unknown.
It does bring closure at this point. In the sentencing today, the judge said that the burnt remains were for a human. Before today, we have never been told about the body and what has happened to the body. So at least now I can say that, well, to a certain extent it has been confirmed that his body was burnt, as we assumed. So it does indeed give a sense of closure to the family.
The convicts have advised their defense attorneys that they are dissatisfied with the decision of the court.
I understand from the clients that they are dissatisfied with both the conviction and the sentence, and they will shortly lodge an appeal and have lodged an appeal in terms of their conviction already.
Sir, so both will be. Your clients did not accept any culpability in their statements, that they maintain their innocence and will take that to appeal?
That is so. If you raise a good point, because in mitigation you're walking a very tight rope. On the one hand, you're asking the court to be merciful because you feel certain things were not considered, but on the other hand, you are also have to acknowledge that you did something that you are saying that you have to appeal that you didn't do. So it's a very difficult tight rope to walk.
The convicted murderers now have a 21-day period in which they can appeal the decision of Justice Antoinette Moore.
My client has indicated that he wants to appeal. I believe that he should still take a little time to reflect on what has happened here, and when he makes his final decision, he has the 21 days to file that notice, and that is what we will do if that is his instructions to me.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
The Minister of Health was in the news, not about the pandemic, but because he shot and killed a burglar on his property. Minister Pablo Marin explained that the burglar charged at him with a knife and he fired a warning shot and then two more, one of which proved fatal for the burglar.
Health Minister Pablo Marin was detained and then released from police custody following a fatal shooting incident at his Corozal home. Marin was awakened by noise coming from the lower flat of his house in the Rainbow Town area, and that is when he says he came face to face with a burglar. Based on the expended shells recovered from the scene, Minister Marin fired 3 shots. At least one caught Arkil Matura, who was later discovered dead among banana trees in an adjacent lot to the minister's property.
Police received a call about an intruder attempting to enter the residence of Mr. Pablo Marin. Upon arrival at that location, police there observed the body of a male person who was later identified as Arkil Matura on the outside near a patch of bananas. Apparently, police observed he had a gunshot injury to his body.
When he got on the first floor, he observed that the burglar bar was removed from one of the windows and some louvers were missing. He went outside around the building, and when he came back inside on the veranda, he was accosted by a lone individual who was brandishing a knife. Mr. Marin said that he ordered the person to put down the knife, and the person charged at him. He fired 1 shot to warn the person, and when he did that, the person turned around and stooped down as if he was going to pick up or do something, and he subsequently fired 2 more shots. And after having done so, the person got up and jumped over the fence.
According to residents in the area, the echoes of the blast rang out just after 10 o'clock on Thursday night, and within minutes, police arrived at the scene and cordoned off the area. The scene was processed and the body of Matura was discovered later.
Right after the last gunshot, we saw police respond quickly, and from there, we saw Honorable Pablo Marin came from the side of his house with a gun, so we noticed it was there that the commotion happened and things. So we saw the police running, thought the thief or whoever was there escaped.
Officer commanding the Crime Investigations Branch for the Eastern Division, Superintendent Alejandro Kawa, was deployed to Corozal to assist with the investigation. He says that the information so far suggests that Marin fired shots at Matura, who charged at him with a knife.
He heard some noise coming down from the lower flood. Upon him making checks at the lower flood, he observed a male person that was on the veranda, along with some items which are suspected to have been stolen from inside of the lower flat of the building. As a result, the person approached Mr. Marin with a knife on his hand, and in return, Mr. Marin fired shots with his licensed firearm, unfortunately, causing a fatal injury to Mr. Matura.
Commissioner of Police Chester Williams confirmed this evening that Minister Marin has since been released and that the investigative file will be forwarded to the Director of Public Prosecution for a directive.
Mr. Marin was taken into custody. He was interviewed and subsequently released pending further directive from the Director of Public Prosecution in respect to this matter.
At the end of August, we hit another COVID-19 milestone when the country recorded its 1,000th confirmed case. September is a month of festivity and nationalism, but in 2020, national celebrations were muted. Mass events were feared to be super spreaders of the virus, so the partying had to be put on pause. And as Belizeans settled in for a quiet time, national disasters headed this way. Hurricane Nana hit southern Belize, causing millions of dollars in losses in the Banana Belt. Fortunately, it spared life, and due to this rapid trajectory, it swept across the south, quickly making landfall between Hopkins and Placencia. Residents breathed a sigh of relief.
The passage of Tropical Storm Nana as a weak Category 1 hurricane over southern Belize brought with it gusty winds overnight that peaked at approximately 75 miles per hour. While the weather system was expected to produce torrential downpours of up to 10 inches in certain parts of the country, there was little rainfall associated with the tempest. Instead, gale-force winds wreaked havoc over several communities in Stan Creek District, including Siltgrass.
Basically, based on our assessment that we did earlier this morning, we found out that 16 families have been displaced because of the roof fell off, or some of them went flat to the ground.
The roof on this building, which has for years been used by the community for various activities, such as summer school and religious outreach, has also collapsed.
I was here right next door, and some folks, because places, yes, were open, but they got crowded and people have been scared of the COVID. So they actually called and said, can we come over? And I said, yes. We'll open the doors to not only this building, but the other building beside me as well. And even I'd open my home. And it so happened that when it was about around 11:30, coming on to close to 12. And then we felt for about an hour, the wind started coming in. And so at the last, just before that happened, the winds really started gusting. And we locked up everything. And all we could hear is a big explosion. Boom! And I said, oh my gosh, what's going on out there?
That frightening noise was in fact the sound of the roof crashing down upon the lower structure.
Lights went off. The water tank cover blew away. It sounded like everything was, and zinc was flying all over the place. So I heard everything firsthand, and it was scary.
Around that same time in Hopkins on Wednesday night, T.S. Nana was also busy tearing off the zinc roof from this elevated wooden house. Its occupants were seeking shelter outside of the village. By the time Adelma Salam returned home this morning, she found the rooftop on the ground below.
When I heard the hurricane is coming, I move out. So when I get the news this morning, they told me that the roof fly out. I feel sad. I'm just renting here. I don't have a house to call a home. I'm just renting here. I'm working here in Hopkins.
While the burden of structural repairs will fall on Salam's landlady, other residents in and around Hopkins were busy removing debris, as well as fallen trees from their properties. The cleanup effort was led by Chairman Orlando Augustine.
We did today now
we did an assessment of the community. We haven't completed that as yet, but so far we have lot of damages in the community. We have some houses that have no roof. They now have identified 10 houses with no roof. We have 2 houses falling down. 2 of them are on the ground right now as we speak. And then we have a lot of trees that are across the streets, and we need them to be cleared out so that people can have access to their homes.
The buzzing of chainsaws and other equipment could be heard across the community. The movement of persons who sought shelter with family and friends could also be seen as they return to their respective homes.
We are very fortunate that we don't have a flood. The flood is with us. Last night, again, we are fortunate we have heavy winds, but there was no rain. Only, they have a little bit of rain. After that, up to this morning, we don't have any rain this morning.
Back in Silkgrass, the damages at Alvarez's nursery are significant. Noe Alvarez, a botanist by trade, is picking up what's left of his garden center. Rebuilding, he says, will take some time.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money right now. You could see a lot of plants get destroyed. But the life continues, so we have to fight for the life. We still will continue to do this. We just start and try build back.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isana Cayetano.
PC Bernard Ikal returned home heroically 6 days after he went missing in the jungles of southern Belize. It was a rare, uplifting moment this year to see Ikal disembark a BDF chopper to reunite with his waiting family.
It was like a scene out of an adventure movie. Onlookers, mostly from the police department, few family members, and the press equipped with cameras ready to document the moment, waited patiently for the helicopter to land at the police training academy in Belmopan. Except that when it touched down, it wasn't an action figure who disembarked. It was the Commissioner of Police, Chester Williams, and Police Constable Bernard Ikal, the cop who went missing in the jungles of Belize for 6 days. It seemed like a theatrical conclusion to the ordeal that Ikal went through. But when his daughter ran to meet him and he hugged her, for the Ikals, that moment was anything but staged. PC Bernard Ikal embraced his family, grateful and happy to be reunited. It's the first time they're seeing him since he left home on Monday, August 31st for work. And the last time his wife spoke to him was on Tuesday of last week when he left to go on foot patrol to Machakilha. PC Bernard Ikal was reported missing 6 days in the jungle of southern Belize, a massive search on land, and on Monday, an air search was launched. A helicopter with Commissioner of Police and the Minister of National Security on board hovered over the general area where PC Ikal was believed to have been. By that afternoon, he turned up at the Machakilha observation post.
When I heard the helicopter, I knew he was going to one direction, to Machakilha. So I said, if I don't go this direction, I'm going to the wrong direction. So the best way is to head to that place where the chopper takes off, and maybe I can find my way.
And when you saw the observation post, what was that moment like for you?
I feel grateful and thankful to God that I made it back to the OP.
PC Bernard Ikal was lost for 6 days in dense jungles, but just how did that happen? He told the press today that he lost track of the patrol, meaning the BDF soldiers. He said that he walked from 7 in the morning to 5 in the evening and rested during the nights. Here's how he explains his time in the jungles.
From my view, I was following the patrol, and I lose conscious of the patrol, and then from there I must take the wrong track, and from there I disappear and got lost. It was rough, wind, rain, everything.
Where did you take shelter?
My shelter, sometimes I took it in the jungle and in the cave.
And according to Commissioner of Police Chester Williams, he was the one who helped to guide the chopper in a direction that would help to bring PC Ikal back to his base.
I told the pilot to hover over the Garcia Farm area, because we believe that if it is that he was lost, it could only be between Machakila and Garcia Farm, because that is the area that has many different picados that you can easily lose your bearing. And so we did that hovering over Garcia Farm for about 20 minutes yesterday, hoping that PC Ikal would be able to see the chopper, and that would be able to give him the ability to catch back his bearing and make his way out of the jungle. And thankfully, from what I have been briefed by PC Ikal, that hoovering was what helped him yesterday to have been able to regain his bearing and made his way back to the Machakila camp.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
Former Prime Minister and Fort George area representative Syed Musa announced he was stepping down from party politics. Musa had suffered a stroke, and while he was making progress in his recovery, he determined that the time had come for him to put an end to his stellar political life.
Belizeans first again! PUB! 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 Que viva el Partido Unión del Pueblo! Que viva Belize! Thank you very much. Have a good time.
That was a young and charismatic Syed Musa at the People's United Party National Convention. Musa is a gargantuan public figure who began his political career pre-independence and fought and won many battles along the way, showing the strength and savvy of a man who has dominated political life for decades. He represented the Fort George division for 10 terms and held various portfolios such as sports, education, economic development, attorney general, and foreign affairs. Musa announced his departure from political life on Tuesday. The two-time Prime Minister suffered a stroke in May, from which he is still recovering.
This was a personal decision by the former party leader and Prime Minister, and at the same time giving the party, not him, is giving the party an opportunity to choose another candidate that can best represent the people of Fort George and that can best deliver that seat for the People's United Party.
Prior to Musa delving into politics, Musa began making a name for himself in the late 1960s along with senior parliamentarian Michael Finnegan. Musa co-founded the ad hoc committee for the truth about Vietnam. He picketed the showing of the Green Berets, an American film.
We picketed against the movie, which was portraying the Vietnam War, and that's the way it went. I am glad to see my friend going. I know the people in Fort George Division will miss him, but that is the way life is. You've got to move on.
Musa won the Fort George seat for the PUP in 1979 and was only defeated once after that by UDP's former leader, the late Dean Lindo, in 1984. But that defeat made Musa a stronger candidate.
In 1984, when the PUP suffered their first defeat, the man who brought back the PUP from dying was Syed Musa, you know. He was not the leader of the opposition or anything, you know. He was a mere member of the party, but he was the de facto leader of the party. George Price was the facial leader of the party and the leader by name, but it was Syed Musa who fought through that whole 5 years. And in 5 years, the PUP recaptured the government in 1989.
Musa ascended to the leadership of the PUP in 1996 and led his party to landslide victories in 1998 and 2003.
I think the people rejected all the lies and the slander and were sick and tired of the mudslinging, and they wanted a party that had prepared itself to govern and to bring about a better life for the Belizean people.
Musa served 2 terms as Prime Minister and stepped down as party leader in 2008. And as we look back at his impactful career, we are reminded of the fierce debater he was in the House of Representatives, leaving us with memorable quotes. For the people of Fort George, while the news of Musa's departure is saddening, they are confident that Musa's presence will still be felt.
He always help pull you on top. You don't have to be financially. It could be just to talk to you. Just talking to him will make you feel, if you get up with a feeling of despair and hopelessness and you meet him, he will stop and give you the time of the day and he talk to you. And after, because I've been there, he spoke to me many times too, and after he talked to you, man, you feel relief, you feel what self a hope, you feel what self-pride. He not the hide side, Musa always the on side. And he not the care for no funny ride. That's the way I could explain for him ways to him.
Reporting for News 5, Hippolyta Novello.
The Philip Golson International Airport reopened on October 1st. Tourism stakeholders greeted the news with enthusiasm. The American Airlines flight brought Belizeans as well as visitors from Miami, Florida.
American Airlines Flight 4656 from Miami touched down at the Philip Golson International Airport shortly after 11 o'clock this morning. Its manifest indicated that 77 passengers were set to disembark on Belizean soil, the first commercial arrival since the PGIA was closed to such traffic on March 23rd. With everything in place to ensure that visitors as well as citizens are adequately protected from the transmission of COVID-19, Belize welcomed its residents and guests with open arms.
We're coming here for holiday and just to have fun. We've been waiting and looking forward to this. So opening up October 1st, we thought we'd come here on the first day.
Joining Ken Goulet from other parts of the United States were dozens of other travelers, including some who have visited the Jewel in pre-COVID times to purchase property.
I've been here many times. First year was in 2000 and traveled around for a month backpacking. And then over the years I've come probably once every 2 years for a couple months. Have a rental property in Cayo. And this trip, the purpose is to purchase a piece of property also in Cayo.
What made you decide to get on the first flight back to Belize, notwithstanding all the circumstances that we're facing with COVID?
I got tired of reading what was happening and what wasn't happening and getting misinformation, so I figured I'd come to find out for myself firsthand. And it was a very simple process.
Trouble-free for persons who opted to take a rapid test 72 hours prior to departure from the U.S. For those who had to be tested upon arrival, the process for clearance was rather time-consuming.
I took my COVID test yesterday in USA and got the rapid results because they require a 72-hour negative result to enter Belize. And so it was easy for me because I got to the green line, which means you just go through because you showed a negative result. I can't speak for the people that haven't taken the test yet that are getting tested in there. It seems to be a longer process if you don't do that before you leave.
The reopening of the country's only international civil airfield after a previously deferred date which was set for August 15th comes after a massive undertaking by government to certify tourism stakeholders in managing visitors amid the coronavirus pandemic. Aside from hotels and resorts, the gold standard certification also applies to the Ladyville Taxi Union as well as private charters. It is the first job for tour operator LaSalle Tillett in the last 6 months.
It's my first job since February, and we're looking forward for something because we have staff that we have to pay, and they're still working with nothing coming in. So we're anticipating that this would help us because of the gold standard. Many people that don't have it, they're calling us to meet their guests. So we hope that this works for us.
Despite a fairly small number of persons coming in today, the resumption of commercial operations at the PGIA sees life being breathed into the local airline industry, albeit a very small gasp.
For us, the opening of the airport represents some confidence in the measures that the government has put in place, that the airlines have put in place in order to mitigate against the future spread of the coronavirus or the COVID-19 disease. In terms of numbers for our operations, we're only looking at about a 5% in comparison to our October schedule last year.
It is anticipated that there will be some improvement in those numbers over the next few months. Until then, the few visitors who are calling on Belize for leisure are planning to make the best of it, restrictions notwithstanding. Are you comfortable with that arrangement, knowing that you can't really roam around freely on your own?
There's lots of good things to see. But we're just happy to be here, hit the beaches, and have fun at the resort.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
With the general elections looming, Prime Minister Dean Barrow officially handed over the UDP reins to Patrick Faber, but the Prime Minister remained in the seat of government until the November elections. In a nationally televised virtual rally, PM Barrow bid farewell after leading his party to 3 consecutive victories in the general elections.
The United Democratic Party, in a nationally televised virtual rally, formally bade Prime Minister Dean Barrow goodbye as he prepares to retire to private life post-November 11th. The venerable leader has been at the helm of the organization since 1998 and has led the party to 3 consecutive victories in the general elections. As he stepped down from the driver's seat, PM Barrow shared parting words with legions of his supporters, who watched intently from their living rooms.
I first off need to say what a tremendous privilege it has been to serve my party as leader over these last 20-plus years. I thank all those with whom I worked, and I especially thank the rank and file, the soldiers of our party, the devoted women and men throughout the length and breadth of this country, who sacrifice every livelong day for our party, who do all for our party, who would give their very lives for our party. Theirs is the glory, and I declare that experiencing their hard work, being a part of their solidarity, their fervent, passionate love for the UDP has been the most uplifting feature of my political life.
The proverbial changing of the UDP guard makes room for new leadership, as well as a new vision for the party, as it attempts a rather difficult feat, having completed a political hat-trick in 2015, that is, to win a 4th consecutive term in office.
As we prepare for our 4th term in office, I humbly accept the honor of serving you, our loyal members, and our great nation as we roll on to victory on November 11th. Before I go any further, though, my friends, please allow me to salute my own constituency, the Collett constituency, whom I believe to be among some of the smartest voters in this country. They have elected me time and time again, and they have demonstrated their love for me. And I want you to know, guys, I love you back. I'm counting on you once again to deliver for the United Democratic Party. Today, as we celebrate this transition, it is in the shadow of the toll that it has taken on our nation. Our hearts and prayers go out to the families that are suffering from the illness, and especially to those who have lost loved ones to this dreaded disease. I implore each of you to be each other's keeper. Let us all do our part to keep from spreading this deadly virus by wearing our masks, maintaining physical distance, and washing our hands.
And with that, the UDP succession plan is manifested.
With highest confidence, with surest conviction, I now cede the mantle of the United Democratic Party leadership to the Honorable Patrick Faber, the Lion of Collett, the greatest Minister of Education this country has ever seen, and the new political champion of all the people of Belize.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isane Cayetano.
On the Pan American Day holiday, 28 inmates found early freedom when they escaped from the Kobe Foundation in Hattieville. Police and BDF mounted an operation to get them back, and they did.
It was about 6 o'clock on Monday evening that the final step of a plan to break free from the Belize Central Prison was set in motion. More than 24 inmates, 28 of them broke free under the cover of darkness and into the bushes. The men, considered armed and dangerous, escaped through the rear side of the prison compound, where there were no cameras located. The daring escape is unprecedented and was well thought of. This escape may have been in the works for a week or so, when inmate Carlos Montejo was made a trustee. He is now being considered one of the 3 masterminds behind the biggest jailbreak in recent history.
And to be honest, I don't know what went wrong, but I know that when we pick trustees, they have to look at things like their criminal history, things like their character and those kinds of things. But for some reason or the other, it would appear that the guard who is in charge of the area may have selected this guy to be a trustee. In this case, I think it was a full man. And I don't know why that particular guy, because if I were aware that he had selected him, I would have stopped it right away, but that was a decision that was made, I guess, last week.
And it could be that from last week, Montejo was building trust with the guard, plotting the escape while no one suspected anything. It was about 1 o'clock that Montejo lured the first prison officer to cell 5, where the guard was threatened and tied up.
What we know so far is that the prison officer at the administrative segregation of the prison was lured under the pretense that there was a prisoner that needed assistance. And the reports are indicating that when he went to offer that assistance, despite not being clear on what assistance was needed, the inmate that told him about the prisoner needing assistance followed behind, and apparently there was the other workman out at the time, and that workman hit him. And when he hit him, he took away a pocket knife that he had, and he went towards the office of the administrative segregation area, and he waited for the other prison officer who was busy out checking other cells.
Montejo was assisted by co-masterminds Elsa Oseguera and Joel Sierra. The trio held hostage 3 officers, removed their uniforms, and tied them up.
And when the prison officer reached the office, then he stuck him up with the penknife and threatened to kill him. But I must say that the first officer, after he knocked him out, the first officer who was lured after he was knocked out, slightly unconscious, they threw him in a cell, and they took off his uniform and they put it on. The inmate with the knife then went up, and he climbed up the stairs for the tower, and he went and relieved the officer of the M223 rifle, and pretty much escorted him down at gunpoint, and also locked him up in the cell along with the other 2.
At first dawn this morning, we mounted our VCPs in strategic locations on the highways, including on the Boom Road. We also this morning at first daybreak did an air reconnaissance using the helicopter. We flew over the entire prison area all the way to the Saboon area. We went all the way to mile 31 behind the zoo, as well as up the Bermudan Landing Road all the way to, I think, an area where Program of Belize has down that way, all the way to nearly reaching Shipyard.
Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
By October 26, COVID-19 had claimed the lives of 50 Belizeans. Still, the country was devastated by the passing of the disease's youngest victim. 7-year-old Arturo Godoy Jr. died alone at the KHMH where he was hospitalized. His family went public to speak of the painful incident in which the precious young boy had lost his life.
My Belizean people, wake up, turn up, one new day, this Belize on nation, power Hana Belize Trump. All night the harmony, our Belize, our power the land of free.
No one could truly understand the pain and hurt that 6-year-old Arturo Godoy was experiencing behind this smile. And behind that smile was a little fighter. Arturo for 2 years was battling a disease and later began experiencing problems with his kidney.
It's not a celiac disease, celiac, right? It's something that goes through his blood and take out little scars, and right? But right now, what was, so they told me, right, that was kidney. That's why he's getting swell.
Arturo became a little fighter 2 years ago when his health began deteriorating, but he would not give up. He wanted to be a normal little boy who went to a normal school.
Arturo has been with us since he entered preschool. Just this September, his mom, on September 7th, I believe, his mom was trying to find a way out to get Arturo to school, but closer to home. And I think she chose to be now attending Louisiana Government School so that the child could go from home to school at a very short distance. Arturo would come to school and he would participate in everything that the school did. In fact, you saw the last picture he had with our cultural day. He came as a mestizo. So whenever he came to school, he did what he possibly could as a child. And that is what I explained to some of my teachers. We gave to that child the childhood and the experiences he needed at the right time.
And even in sickness, Arturo kept going, doing his homework, paper-based learning to keep up with his class. He recently placed second in a poem competition.
Although he was sick, he got a video right now going on, right? When he said his poem, my baby is dark, and he was swelling. He was swelling, yes. My baby said his poem, my baby do his work, my baby, he feel all right, he feel good, you understand? So, that's why I can't imagine how this happened like that.
But even now, the family challenges continue as they fight to lay Arturo to rest.
They don't want to give us his body. They want us to pay $2,215 at undertaker, something they call it undertaker. He will just go find my baby and bring it, because he said that's the law, that nobody else could find my baby.
Do you have the money to pay?
I don't got no money for that. I'm not working 2 months.
Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
On November 11th, voters resolutely went to the polls to elect a new government. It was very early in the night when the results began to show a decisive PUP victory. The PUP captured 26 of 30 seats, giving the party an overwhelming margin of victory. John Briceño also made history to become the first prime minister from Orange Walk.
I, John Briceño, do swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Belize and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as Prime Minister and do right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will. So help me God.
And with that, Prime Minister John Briceño was officially sworn into office by the Governor General. After 3 terms out of office, the People's United Party has formed the government, crushing the United Democratic Party in Wednesday's elections. PM Briceño made history, becoming the first Prime Minister representing a division outside of Belize City. And as he was sworn in, his supporters gathered inside the Belize House compound in Belmopan. The Orange Rock Central A representative greeted his supporters at the entrance before making his way up the hill with his wife Rosanna and children. His close family and friends were part of the event. A representatives such as Curdle Hyde, Julius Espat, and Kevin Bernard were present for Briceño's swearing in. And after that was done, Briceño shared his first words as Prime Minister.
I am lost of words as to how I could really and truly express my feelings at this moment. Feeling of gratitude first to our Creator, our God, and also to my family, to my colleagues, our candidates, our standard bearers, and to the people of Belize. The Governor General said it best, that God speaks through his people, and the Belizean people have spoken yesterday.
And the message was loud and clear. The People's United Party won 26 seats, a landslide victory. The margins were huge. The United Democratic Party won 5 seats, mostly in Belize City.
And as such, we respect the decision of the Belizean people. As of today, we are no longer PUP standard bearers, but we are representatives of the people. We are a government of the people of Belize. And I want to assure everyone that we are going to be an open, accountable, transparent, and accessible government for the people of Belize.
Under Briceño's leadership, the PUP managed to successfully convince the people of Belize in their Everybody for Win slogan and in the plans and goals set out in the party's Plan Belize manifesto. Briceño and the PUP are taking over government during a challenging time. The COVID-19 pandemic has crippled the economy, affecting tens of thousands of Belizeans, and the floods have made the matters worse. But Briceño says he's confident that his party will revive the economy.
It's an awesome feeling, but at the same time, when you feel the burden of the office, it also is very humbling to realize that this nation is depending on myself as Prime Minister and to our colleagues who were elected yesterday as representatives. So I think it will take some time to sink in. But right now we are happy, we're elated, we are humbled by the confidence that the Belizean people have given us.
Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
The pandemic realities sunk in quite early for Briceño. Shortly after being sworn in, he tested positive for the coronavirus. Several persons closely associated with the Prime Minister, including his Chief of Staff, Stuart Leslie, also tested positive. As positive cases spiked, the death toll jumped to over 100 persons. As if battling a pandemic weren't enough, Hurricanes Eta and Iota, which both made landfall south of Belize in Nicaragua, dumped historic levels of rain over Belize, causing extensive flooding across the country.
The torrential rains over the past week did not let up until Sunday, but by then, the country had been drenched and several districts are reporting severe flooding. In the village of Maypen, located several miles off the Philip Colson Highway, access to the area can only be made by boat, as the entire land that encompasses the village is underwater. While its residents have not evacuated their bread and butter, some 350 heads of cattle were under threat. Since Friday, several heads of cattle have been rescued as livestock extraction continues with assistance from the government and Mennonite farmers.
It's over the land now, completely taken over, so there is no land for our animal in that area, right? So with that said, we had get some assistance from Mr. Mai, the Prime Minister, our area rep, Mr. Leal, along with the Mennonites, who is giving us a big assistance in that area at this moment. The government has assigned 2 places for us. One is Yo Creek and Central Farm. Right now we are starting off in Yo Creek. It already take 100. Now we are here again doing it. So it probably will Central Farm will start this week now with, right? Like I said, going over everything in a small terms, it's a lot of work. To take out 50 cow per day. 50 cow per day, whereby we have to use boat 3 miles. Then the Mennonites bring in a spider with a trailer, take it about a mile to the trailer that hooked up to the vehicle, then move off from there.
Wow, so any access to the village itself is by boat? Further east in Moscow, the Oriana family have been farming the land in the village for 3 decades, providing vegetables to markets in Belize City and Orange Walk. The family has several plots of farmland that is used to cultivate tomatoes, sweet peppers, cabbages, and more. All tens of thousands of dollars in investment have been destroyed by the flood waters, not to mention the livestock that they have.
Right now we have tomatoes, sweet pepper, watermelons, cabbage, and well, everything is underwater right now. And if some is not underwater, the amount of water that the plant sucks still affects the whole plant, and the plants have to die because it's an excess of water. Well, more or less in my family, there are about 9 to 10,000 plants of tomatoes, like 4,000 plants of sweet pepper, and like one acre and a half of cabbage. And that's a part of the cattle that, well, the cattle have to find the higher land to be safe of the water too.
Belize Rural NEMA Coordinator Alpheus Gillett says that history would show this phenomenon occurs once every 10 years, give or take a year or two. Gillett says that the situation in Belize Rural is expected to get worse before it gets better.
It's bad in Belize Rural, and I am anticipating that it will get a little worse before it gets better. What is good news is that we see now that the rain has eased off a little, so that's good news, right? But we still see some water coming from the west. So and our waterways are to its capacity. It can't take anymore. Like for example, we see now Crooked Tree Lagoon, like I said before, the water start backing up. So we have water backing up from Crooked Tree Lagoon, and it's also coming from the west. So it's like a double impact. So let's hope that we will see some improvement some later part of this week if the rain does not continue. But we should see some improvement, but I believe it'll get a little worse before it gets better.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
On December 8th, Director of Health Services, Dr. Marvin Manzanero, confirmed he had contracted the virus and was hospitalized. It sent shockwaves across the country, and in the days to come, fortunately, Manzanero would beat the virus. Manza, as he's known, announced it on his Facebook page. While Dr. Manza was able to recover, it was not the case for the newly elected Corozal Bay representative, David Dido Vega. The young politician passed away on the day the National Assembly's ceremonial opening took place in Belmopan. After spending days hospitalized, Dido would succumb to the virus. His death sent a dark cloud at the opening, and Belizeans plunged into mourning. Dido's wife, Ingrid, was also hospitalized, and fortunately, she beat the virus.
A moment of silence observed by parliamentarians at the inaugural sitting of the House of Representatives and the Senate in Belmopan for colleague and PUP area rep for Corozal Bay, David Vega, who has lost his battle against the deadly novel coronavirus. The first-time area rep had been hospitalized at a clinic in Corozal for some time before his condition worsened. On December 5th, he was transported to the Belize Healthcare Partners in Belize City, where he remained intubated until his passing this morning. Today, Vega would have taken the oath along with his colleagues, another step towards his goal, which was to bring development to the people and division of Corozal Bay.
My party gave me the opportunity to be their representative, and now the people of Corozal Bay have given me their vote of confidence to go to Belmopan. There's nothing to celebrate about. There will be children going tonight that didn't have anything to eat for dinner. There will be homes that will get wet when the bad weather comes, and there are people that cannot afford a laptop to do their schoolwork. I sincerely believe that the work has just started. Yes, we put in work to be elected, but the toughest task ahead is to make sure that the quality of life of our people in Corozal Bay and the entire Belize to be upgraded.
This was the last interview with News 5 given by Vega on the night of his victory in Corozal Town, having unseated the three-termed former Minister of Health, Pablo Marin. Back then, he characterized his victory as emotional, having lost his mother earlier this year. He was a fighter, and there was all hope that he was going to make a full recovery. PUP party leader and Prime Minister John Briceño says that even on his deathbed, Vega was thinking about helping his people.
He was an exemplary teacher. He reached out to a lot of young people. He was always concerned and wanting to do things for his community. This is a true story. The doctor who was attending to him told me that the last thing that Dido told him, because he knows the doctor, they're both from Corozal, and he told the doctor, you know, doctor, he said, I have to get out from here. I have to go and dig some drains because some people are on flooding. That shows the kind of man that Dido was, that he was about his family, about his community, and about his country, always wanting to serve.
Florencio Marin Jr., with whom he was very close, was able to hold back tears long enough to speak on the character of the man who was affectionately known as Dido.
He is a son of the soil from Corozal town. Dido grew up an active sportsman. Really, he loved sports, he loved the town, and it really goes without saying. I know we always say this, but Belize and the Corozal Bay Division have really lost a champion. I know I could speak a little bit about his character, where this guy, I mean, he was one determined fellow, really determined fellow as Dido. I mean, I remember the first time he came to see me that he wanted to run. He told me, I told him, I said, Dido, you're sure this is a challenging career, you know, so it's not just for anybody. He said, I am as serious as when I wanted to go study and I had no money.
Other parliamentarians extended their condolences to Vega.
A sad moment for us all, and we send out our sincere condolences to his family and to all Belizeans who have lost a loved one during this pandemic.
He fought with us in the trenches during this election, and we are so deeply sorry for his loss, and we extend our deepest sympathies to his family, to his wife, to his children, and to the Corozal Bay community.
Vega was a career math teacher, a father of 2 daughters, and a husband. He died at age 47. Dwayne Moody for News 5.
The nation would be touched again by the death of 2 sibling doctors within days of Vega's passing. Kenneth and Kevin Guerra died within hours of each other from complications associated with COVID-19. The 2 frontline workers were deployed to health facilities in the West and South. Both were laid to rest in their hometown of Benqueviejo del Carmen.
A funeral service, although abruptly carried out due to the COVID-19 protocols, was held less than 24 hours after a pair of twin doctors from Benqueviejo del Carmen succumbed to the virus over the weekend. Residents gathered along the highway leading to the cemetery as the bodies of siblings doctors Kevin and Kenneth Guerra were escorted by police and the fire truck and taken by Koyi's funeral home in matching coffins to their resting place in the town. The identical twins, both 33 years old, were doctors working within the health system at the Independence Polyclinic in the south and at the San Ignacio Community Hospital in the west. They formed an integral part of the team of frontline workers in the fight against the pandemic and themselves became victims of the virus, leaving behind their families and loved ones. Kevin died on Saturday afternoon after being intubated at the KHMH. At that time, Kenneth was also intubated and was in need of A-positive blood from a person who had recently recovered from COVID-19. 18 hours later, Kenneth also died from complications related to the virus. Health and Wellness Minister Michelle Shabat attended the funeral. He says it's a sad day for the entire country.
Our condolences go to the entire family and all the families who have lost loved ones. It's a very sad day for everyone.
So, Minister, how do you feel at this moment?
It's a very sad moment, Mr. Pandey, for everybody. Very sad for everybody across the country and the families here who are suffering.
It's a very sad day for the constituency of Kai West, all the residents, especially the family. We have lost 2 great doctors of the constituency of Kai West.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
As Christmas approached, the government implemented regulations to keep Belizeans safe and ensure that they stayed at home to avoid transmission of the virus. The curfew was reinstituted and inter-district travel between the 2 northern districts was also prohibited.
We will now be having a nationwide curfew, and that is starting on the 20th of December, and it will commence at 8 p.m. So 8 p.m. every evening you are to be at home, and that goes until 5 a.m. the following morning. Minors, anybody under 16 years of age, must be at a residence or their home that they are staying by 6 p.m. So it is different for minors. You have to be home by 6 p.m. and that curfew extends to 5 a.m. the following morning.
The sensational murder trial of WPC Michelle Brown ended in mid-December. Brown, a police constable, was accused of the murder of well-known barber Farid Ahmad. She was found not guilty.
Arguably the most prominent Supreme Court trial of 2020 came to an end today in the courtroom of Justice Colin Williams. The judge ruled that Police Constable Michelle Brown is not guilty of the December 2017 murder of well-known barber Farid Ahmad. Trial began in late November, in which testimonies by key witnesses were heard, some reliable and others were completely disregarded. In conclusion, Justice Williams felt that the prosecution had not satisfied the court that Brown was guilty of murder.
From the onset of this incident, we had, as a family, we were resolute to leave the matter up to the court and the hands of the law. And so there is a verdict, and we respect that verdict. And as a family, we will just continue to move on, pick up the pieces and, move on from here.
Inconsistencies in the evidence presented by the prosecution, coupled with quote-unquote disappearing evidence, which include photographs taken at the scene but not submitted in court, not to mention particles and swabs taken by scenes of crime personnel from Farid's BMW SUV that were documented but were never heard or presented in court. Present for the ruling today were members of the Ahmad family. Following the ruling, we asked Tahira Ahmad about her take on these comments.
We had every optimism and respect for the process of the law. And so, yes, we did hear some disheartening, I would say, missing pieces. But, we have to respect the verdict and the process that took its course, right?
The fact is that essentially you guys are not getting justice for the death of your brother.
Well, justice for us means Farid being here. And if Farid is not here, then, that it's...
Justice Williams also looked at the cause of death of Farid. A report says that his death was due to a brain injury sustained when the vehicle crashed into a parked vehicle after he was shot. In his ruling, the judge noted that he did not believe portions of Brown's testimony where she said that a third person got into Farid's vehicle, whom she recognized by voice as a member of the special assignment team. The woman police officer accused that person as the trigger man.
Well, I think quite a bit came up during the trial. I think as well that there were certain names of officers that she also mentioned, right? And maybe that is an element for question in terms of the prosecution and the DPP's office. Why were those missing pieces not presented in the trial, right? It's unfortunate how it ended up, but this is a process and we have to respect what arises out of it. We will go on continue remembering Farid as the loving brother and caring son and father and loving husband as he was, and continue living with those cherished memories, right? As we have been doing for the past 3 to 4 years.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
And amid all the pains of 2020, there was reason to give thanks. We've been faithfully following Leonora Patnett for years. When she turned 107, we were there to record the moment. The Wagner's Lane resident has lived to defy the odds. When we called on her for her birthday, we found her full of zest and reading without glasses.
107.
What? You live so long, Miss Leonora. Leonora Patnett turns 107 years old on Sunday. It's a milestone that she didn't expect to reach. After all, there are only a handful of people in Belize who can call themselves a centenarian. I think you may live to see 107?
No, I never think that.
Why?
Well, most people that live, then never live too long.
These days, she can still move around with little to no ailments. One of her proudest accomplishments at this ripe old age is that she can still take her own bath. She spends her days mostly reading and watching TV. Yes, at 100 years old, Leonora Patnett can see and still read without the use of eyeglasses.
I get up and then come out the hall and sit down. And then first thing in the morning, send a praise pray to God to help me, that I feel good.
And then when you come out the hall, what you do?
Sit down. Sit down and watch the TV.
Which show on TV you like watch?
I like watch Trump. I like watch Trump.
You move wrong and so by your
Yes, because I would get up going in the morning. I'll go to the bathroom and I have to bathe myself and everything. Well, thank God that I don't feel no way. And I get...
And you still see, you still see really well.
Yes, I know you get no, I don't have no eyeglass to say, well, I can't see without it. I don't use eyeglass. As long as I know this small writing, the big, how you call it?
Big letters.
The big letters.
So you still read and everything?
Yes.
And Leonora Patnett credits her strong faith in God and staying away from smoking and drinking to be the reasons why she's still alive beyond 100 years old.
Pray to the Lord. The Lord give me that strength for
live so long.
Yes.
You say God help you. What else you think help you? You have to share some of your secret, make people know, man.
Well, the thing is, when I young, I no smoke, and I no drink. I go to church.
The Southside Belize City resident says that there will be no birthday celebration this year, but she'll have cake on Sunday and spend the day with her daughter and great-grandkids. Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
And these are only some of our stories that made the headlines in 2020. We hope you have enjoyed a flashback of the memorable events that shaped one of the most challenging years of our times. We look forward to your support in 2021, and thank you for staying with us.